Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Today we've got a subject and it's pretty much out there. Now to help us air it, we've got Dr. Fassi Yusuf, a lawyer and communications consultant. Thanks a million, Fassi, for coming on.
My pleasure.
Indeed. And Dr. Jide Johnson, Deputy Provost. When my producers abbreviate to DEP, I said department. Dr. Jide Johnson, Deputy Provost, NIJ. Thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure
Jide.
to be with you, Uncle Yori.
Indeed.
And to be with the two uncles on set. It's a privilege.
But we're going to be talking not law today, not family today, but law, or at least aspects of the law, as is out there on the streets, by which I mean it's one thing when professors of law, when they gather together in the ivory tower and are looking at the nuts and bolts of this thing, and what does it mean to the ordinary man in the street, on whose behalf I assume laws are made anyway for good governance and society and all of that. Okay, so at the recent MBA conference, the president dropped one, if you want to put it like that, where he asserted that, well, you know what, guys, a rule of law is going to be subject to national interest, security, and integrity. He didn't use those exact words, but you know what I mean. Say, wait a minute. Then it occurred to me that, okay, yeah, it makes a bit of sense, but what do I know about it? After all, over in France, there's an aspect of the law when the charge is terrorism, then the whole thing turns around and you have to prove that you are not guilty. The French are like the rest of us, innocent until proven guilty. But if it's a terrorism charge, I understand reading newspapers that they turn it around and say, now, Oga, you prove that you are not a terrorist, that you're not guilty. So I said, is this that kind of a thing where, let's face it, expert lawyers can get away with almost anything if we play by the rules the way they are? Has somebody been looking at it from the point of the that which the lawyers call unlearned? Has somebody been looking at it from that point of view and said, you know what, can we bring a bit of fairness into the play? So it doesn't matter if you had, 10, 20, 30 million naira to pay a lawyer a brief because that is his reputation of being extra smart. If you're guilty, you're guilty. Well, after that rant of mine, Fassi, after that rant of mine,
I thought you would become a...
Could you please put illuminate this with some knowledge? First of all, that whole idea of the rule of law will now be subject to national security. Give me your interpretation.
Well, I think, first of all, we must know the concept of national interest. See, national interest is a nebulous concept. It all depends on what the government says is national interest. But we know some fundamentals, like one, the integrity of the country should not be shaken. The welfare of the people should be taken care of. The general security of the country should not be affected.
Be compromised in any way.
Should not be compromised in any way. And the general well-being of the people must be paramount to the government.
Okay, that part, Dr. Fassi,
Yes.
is the
national security.
national security. So
then the rule of
tell
law.
me what rule of law is.
The rule of law.
So I can put it against what you
yes,
just said.
the rule of law is that things should be done according to what the law dictates. That is, the general principles of law, the supremacy of law over the whims and caprices of individuals, whether those in government and all the rest. But generally, the norms and practices of the society, that is, what the law establishes. So you cannot go outside the law now to impose your own wish. But there are some circumstances, like you try to pontificate, under which those rights could be abridged. For example, corruption, terrorism, and all the rest, or anything that affects the well-being of the nation.
So there's an inbuilt conflict from the beginning.
Of course.
From the very, very beginning.
Yes.
Let me take Dr. Jide's perspective. Dr. Jide Johnson, what's your perspective on what the president said would be the order of the day as far as his government is concerned for now?
Well, the president is a product of the law. Every office Nigeria as a nation is a product of the law. Without the 1999 Constitution as amended, the president wouldn't be president. The Attorney General of the Federation wouldn't be the Attorney General of the Federation. There won't be a Senate president. There won't be the Supreme Court. So the law of the land is the supreme organ. That's what the rule of law is all about.
Okay.
As propounded by evidence and subject to different interpretation over the years, that the law, the extant laws, status of a nation shall be the supreme. It shall be higher than any individual, shall be higher than any office of the land, because everything must operate within the purview of the law. Like Dr. Fassi said, national interest is simply defined.
Because
the total well-being.
Okay, because you just finished about the rule of law now, and now you want to go into
the total
what national interest
is. The total well-being of the citizenry. The total well-being, not the total well-being of the leaders, not the total well-being of a particular office or a particular section, but the total, that's what
the total well-being
of the entire nation.
Every member of society.
Every member of society.
Now, can that concept, from your experience over the decades, can it be exploited, sidestepped, circumvented?
You can't exploit because there are...
No, but by the rule of law.
No, because there are institutions.
You told us what national integrity is, national security is, and you've told us. We also heard it from here. Is it possible that some of those issues can be sidestepped with the use of the rule of law, and that is what the president's statement seems to be addressed to, possibly blocking?
Power corrupts, absolutely. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Now, you can't take away rule of law without bringing in the concept of separation of powers. I'm not talking about checks and balances, because there is tendency for occupiers of public office to arrogate powers of the state to themselves. And that's why there are institutions. Now, when there is a threat to national security, the most important thing is you approach the courts. The courts is meant to interpret and pass judgment. That of the executive is to execute. That of the legislature is to legislate. And that's why that for these organs, for them not to sidestep on the rights of the people, there should be checks and balance. There is no action of government that is above the law. There are institutions of the state that are meant to take care of any issue, whether national interest or personal interest, group interest or sectional interest.
Now, what you've said, I imagine you will agree, can all be subjected to all other things being equal.
Ceteris paribus in economics.
I'm sure all that you just explained to us depends that we have a fair, egalitarian, and just society where all other aspects are equal and everybody's playing fair.
That's where we are. That's what we are aspiring to. That's what democracy is about.
Now that's why I want to come back to Dr. Fassi and say, look, Dr. Yusuf, can we say that those two important concepts we're talking about this morning, rule of law on the one hand, national security, but especially rule of law, is the same all over the world, perhaps like democracy?
That's not absolute.
About the rule of law.
About
the way it is defined
and
in one country might be different from the way it's viewed in another country.
Of course, what is important is national security. There have been cases where even America, the bastion of democracy, the bastion of the rule of law, have trampled on the liberty of the people in the interest of the nation. Because national security is supreme. Without national security, you and I would not be here. You remember the cases where administrations in America trampled on people's liberty. Remember the detention camp in Guatemala and others. Remember the invasion of several countries. You remember the banning of countries, nationals of certain countries from entering the United States of America. You remember the various actions being put in place by Trump, even though Trump is an exceptional.
Yes.
It's an extraordinary.
But Guantanamo Bay that you cited is a lovely example of the leader of democracy, quote unquote,
there's
going blatantly against the law before the eyes of the world.
And even remember, United States of America disobeying United Nations resolution. Remember, United States invaded Libya, invaded Iraq. Even Britain joined them, only to discover 10 years after that it was wrong. A misadventure.
Yes.
And they acted on false information and all the rest. So it all depends on what we're talking about. That's not absolute.
That's why I was stressing
my colleagues are making
all other things being equal parts.
Paribus. All things being equal. You see, when you talk about the concept of national security, I've told you it's a nebulous concept. It all depends on what the society, the country, or the leaders, what they say the national security is. But we all know the basics. That is, there should be no threat to national security. There should be no threat to the well-being of the people. There should be protection of life and property and all that. Once all this, in fact, national disaster is a threat to national security.
Now the issue of Guantanamo Bay was based on Patriot Act.
There should be no threat to life and property of every single individual. I would want to include, sir, as aspects, aspects of that, the asset, the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth, surely that is the property of the people as well.
See, Uncle Yori, Guantanamo Bay was not based in the United States of America.
Outside.
It was based outside of America. It couldn't have been in America. The courts will have ruled and it will have nullified. And there was no American citizen that was held in Guantanamo Bay. So when we use that illustration, we must put it in proper perspective. It was a fallout, and it was a fallout of 9/11. There was a great threat to the American side.
I'm getting you. You're saying, if I understand you rightly, sir, that the fact that the person is a national greatly affects the operation of the rule of law.
There was no American head.
There
was no American head, and that bay couldn't be cited in America because just one judge, a judge, until he got to Supreme Court. For example, Donald Trump became the president and he came up with his travel ban. Just one judge in one circuit said, no, this is not right. It's illegal, until it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled.
Yes.
Now, the president, but if you reverse the case in this part of the world, the decision of the president will have stand before it's challenged. That's why I said institutions are meant to take it's meant for the Supreme Court to determine pattern. Is this thing a threat to national security or not?
Let me quickly get your impression on the French system that we talked about. I've heard it talked about blandly that this is the French judicial system. It's not actually. When I researched it, as far as looking at it on the internet, it's called research. It appears that the French are very much like the rest of the world in terms of innocent until proven guilty, until it is a terrorism charge. Then the thing is turned on its head, and the accused must now prove his innocence. What are your impressions about that?
Because it's specified, it's not nebulous, it's not ambiguous. It's not nebulous, it's not ambiguous. For example, corruption in China. Now, corruption in China is a threat to national security. Corruption.
In Nigeria,
I'm coming. That's why it's specified. That's why it needs to be specified. I'm not against us having a law. For corruption, terrorism, a threat to national security, and then the judges, the courts will know. There will be a judgment. You know, you can't cry for rule of law when you steal our money, the money that is meant for the well-being of the entire society.
Which you've almost likened to terrorism.
It's even more than terrorism.
There you go.
It's more than terrorism. What I'm saying, in effect, is simple. These issues should be outlined, that an average person
and be properly defined.
Because I can, on the guise of national security, close TVC. I can, on the guise of national security, close channels. I can, on the guise of national security, close Third Mainland Bridge.
Okay, let me get Dr. Yusuf. I know Jide is citing those way-out examples because they are still within the parameters of this conversation.
I'm telling you that if TVC, God forbid, decides to broadcast matters that can destroy this country, that can bring this country to war.
There you go.
The government will be obliged to close down TVC.
And the government has actually done so in recent times.
Yes.
You know,
in the interest of national security.
They won't even go as far as government. Even Born, Abi, who are these
Yes.
people? One of the agencies of
because
government.
when you talk about national security, as I said, it's an omnibus thing.
Yes.
It's a nebulous concept.
And common sense comes into play.
It all depends. You see, we cannot define our national, or let's say, the way things are done in some climes with the way they are done in other climes. It all depends on the peculiarities of our environment. For example, now, before Singapore could get to, it used to be a pariah state, one nation state. It was a country 40 years ago, 50 years ago, nobody wanted to deal with. The United Arab Emirates we are now talking about today was 40 years. In fact, the constitution of that, the federal constitution of United Arab Emirates, Nigeria was one of those they used as a springboard. But because they were able to define from the onset what they wanted as a nation, their security, their well-being, and all the rest. Singapore today, is a disciplined country because it has been able to draw a line between national security and what's the other one we're talking about now?
Rule of law.
Rule of law.
You know.
The same thing in China. Why are we not attacking China? Because if you steal there, especially if you're a public officer, public official,
You're executed.
you see, the penalty is death.
And there's nothing
Right here in
extraordinary about
Nigeria
it
now,
because of initial definitions.
Yes.
Right?
Because it's clarified.
It's clear.
But it is also defined in our various laws. What if you are involved in terrorism, what you do. If you are involved in acts that are likely to bring down the state, what you do.
Exactly.
But it is for the court to interpret. It's not for the court to define what it is. It is for the state, that is, the executive, to define it as passed by the
The
legislation.
executive is not the state. The executive is a component of the state.
Yes, but
The executive is an aspect of the state.
the Supreme Court will not embark on any voyage of discovery. There's no judicial activism in Nigeria. There's no judicial activism where the court will on its own.
So let me
explore this area. It's what the government has sent to or what the legislature
yes,
has
what
sent
the law say.
What the law says, that it will interpret. It's as simple as
Brings us
that.
to the concept of separation of powers and checks
We're
and
not
balances.
talking about the doctrine.
Before we even get there, sir, I was going to say that it seems to me that, and let me be the first to say that I don't know anything about it, being what lawyers refer to as non-learned, I would seem to think that the laws as they exist can operate very, very well either way, depending on what the definitions are. So that if the definitions are that rule of law is supreme, it's as we have got it from all over the world, and it doesn't relate to our own particular circumstance here, the laws can work. And in such a case, and I'm really taking all sorts of shortcuts here, in such a case, a guilty man could walk free. Even lawyers will tell you. Our lawyers will tell you that the law tells you that 9 men should go free rather than 1 man be,
to be convicted.
Now, on the other hand, if we now say that, you know what, this infringes against national security, that your so-called rule of law does not apply. And then you prevent all sorts of leakages and people getting away, because oftentimes the law outwits us. The law that is called an ass.
Who determines that infringement?
Who determines that the law is an ass? Who determines that sometimes the law is an ass?
The symbolic representation of the state is the executive. No doubt about that. However, the executive cannot say, for example, Jide Johnson, you are a threat to national security, so we keep you in detention. It behoves on the executive to present Jide Johnson before the courts, for the courts to determine that indeed Jide Johnson is a threat to national security. You can't be an accuser and a judge. The executive cannot sit in the office and pass that judgment. That's why there are institutions. That's why you talk about one of the fundamental principles. One of the fundamental principles. There are 3 elements of rule of law. 1 is the supremacy of the Constitution. 2 is the equality before the law. 3 is the fundamental human right. which is sacrosanct. The right, an infringement on the right of a Nigerian is national security. If you detain a Nigerian, for example, illegally, it's a threat to national security. Now, for example, if an American is kidnapped,
illegally will mean with no justifiable cause.
Exactly. Let me give you an example. Then I'll end with this. If an American is kidnapped in the Republic of Benin, it's a threat to it's a threat to American national security. America will deploy all the resources of the state. All the resources of the state. 12 boys that were in cave, that were trapped in cave in Thailand. The global resources were deployed because it's a threat to national security.
But I don't want us to get too far away from the argument of rule of law will not necessarily be, hitting, what is it now?
National security.
National security on the head any old how, simply because the club exists.
Exactly.
The president said, Rule of law is an excellent thing. My government is not against it. My government supports it, but it shall, be subject to national security. So there's no other aspect in which the rule of law is interfered with. And in any case, government has done something like that with, what is that, that thing that the president signed? That thing that Trump is also signing nowadays? The executive order. Executive Order 6. Where they came out and said that if you have a certain amount of money in your bank account and we're not too sure how it is, we can freeze it. Now, lawyers shouted, but Lai Mohammed explained to us on set here that I think the figure is it must be 50 million naira. It's not across the board. It's not that we just suspect you have only 25 million, we'll take it. I think the figure, so there are these definitions that you are asking about.
For the enforcement of any,
of course,
there must be a court order.
Of course.
You must approach a court, and a court will give you an order, then you enforce it. I'm not against that.
Excuse me.
Anyone that steals money should be jailed.
Okay.
Should be jailed. How is a fellow going to be jailed? It goes through
Our problem is enforcement. We don't enforce the laws that we have.
It goes through a legal process. So even in America today, there are laws in America. There have been instances where government violates its own laws. For example, now, if somebody is to be deported, you have a procedure to follow, to adopt. But in most cases now, they don't follow that procedure. They pick you up forever. They think that you're okay. Your papers are not right. They deport you. You are a green card holder, or you're on vacation. You're there lawfully. You commit an offense. Instead of taking you to court, the next thing they deport you. So it all depends on the circumstances.
Yeah.
And it has not been said, and it has not been done, that where your right is infringed upon, you cannot approach the court.
No.
There have been cases. For example, now we have the case of a recent colleague that was incarcerated for 2 years. He's gone to court now, seeking for damages. So if you talk about national security vis-a-vis rule of law, even if the government attempts to breach your right, the court is there.
They will not allow it. Because I think it's important.
Who is the government?
Well, it's important to say that this particular...
When I'm talking about the government,
this particular
the executive represents the government. There are 5 components, I always say it, but people always talk about 4. You see, the first one, the first estate of the realm is the executive. The second realm is the legislature. The third realm is the judiciary or judicature. The fourth realm is the media. The fifth realm are we, the people. So the government represents the government. I mean, the whole lot. So others take the cue. So if the government, when I say the government, the executive violates any law, the courts are there to interpret.
It can be held to account.
To account. So there is nothing absolute.
But,
you see,
and on that, sorry, sir, on that particular aspect, I want to come back to Jide about the absolutism that seems to, permeate your submission. That look, this thing, it's a black and white affair. If it's not black, it's white. If it's not white, it's black. I think that position also exists in your presentation.
You see, the President of the United States of America couldn't stop the Justice Department going after his campaign manager.
Okay, I think it's an excellent
and
answer.
Going after he couldn't.
Yes.
Why? Because the moment you swear in your Attorney General, his responsibility is no longer to the office of the president. His responsibility is to the state. The president cannot do anything. The only power he has is probably to prerogative of mercy, probably after the past.
Sorry, sir. Right next to that, the Supreme Court in the U.S. could not weigh in on the president breaking the law by a la Guantanamo Bay.
Because you see, all the examples Dr. Fasi has given, the illegal immigrant or someone that went to America, they are for people that are not citizens of the country. Like you are deported. No, they are not for. Guantanamo Bay was not meant for American citizens. They were meant for terrorists.
They can withdraw your citizenship.
Terrorists that America determined were terrorists.
That
American prisoners of war.
Exactly, that determined that were terrorists. You see, don't let us.
America can withdraw your citizenship.
Can withdraw your citizenship?
Yes.
Can withdraw your citizenship? Any nation can withdraw your citizenship. I agree with you on that. But it cannot be done with an executive fiat. You have to approach the court. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think the courts have been precluded from the president's statement. What the president said, Jide, I wonder if you consider that.
See,
the courts were not shut out.
If you're a student of history, you understand that the emergence of dictatorial regime are product of subsuming national interest under personal interest.
Would you go as far as assuming or suggesting that that is what this is?
Look,
would you go that far?
No. I'm telling that the emergence
this administration is tending towards the dictatorial. Would you go as far? Jide, would you go as far?
Let me clarify for you. I've said it over and over time again. One of the unfortunate experiences we have had in this country is that in 1999, we had a former military head of state emerging as the president. And in 2015, when we are transiting from one party to another party, we had a former military head of state. And there's a certain age you get to. You can't start to learn how to use your left hand. There's a certain age you get to.
So that these people are not Democrats by nature. Seems to be. They might have become Democrats by being born again.
By design.
By being born again.
By design. Because
therefore, let me repeat the position.
See, for me, if I have been the handlers and managers of the president, that statement I would have left it for my Attorney General to say. It shouldn't come for the custodian. It shouldn't come.
It's the president that gives direction to how we're going about now.
You know the chief law officer of the state? Dr. Fasi is a lawyer. He has
yes.
The chief law officer of the state is not the president. It's the Attorney General.
Nevertheless, the president gives direction.
I will have given that assignment.
Does the president not give direction to the host?
I will have given that assignment to my Attorney General. It will take flags for
all right then. You know
I'm not the custodian of the democratic values, the democratic principles. The president.
But you don't want to go as far as saying that this is dictatorial on behalf of the.
No, because there's no action that has been taken concerning it.
So I can't. I'm going to go on a quick break. Let me go on a quick break. Let me go on a quick break. I'll be right back. Please don't go anywhere. We'd like to have your calls as well. Okay, welcome back. A quite energetic conversation this morning. Dr. Fasi Yusuf, lawyer and communications consultant. Dr. Jide Johnson, Deputy Provost, NIJ. And, well, the president's statement at the recent MBA conference that the rule of law will be subject to national security, you know, it's sparked off discussion, you know, conversations. I imagine that those, well, let me put it this way. The president's statement probably explains why Dasuki is still in detention, in spite of the fact that, you know, there have been many, I think up to 6 court orders that he should be, you know, let go on bail. Government has not obeyed that. El Zaki is another instance that I imagine people can cite. So that the president's statement would appear to have given some sort of understanding to that background. Rule of law is what it is. We obey the laws in Nigeria. We do respect rule of law. But when we see exceptions as big as that, then that seems to have explained it, hasn't it, Fasi?
Well, the 2 instances you mentioned, regrettably, I will not ally myself with the government. See, if they fail to present any concrete evidence before the court, then it defeats whatever case they have against either Colonel Dasuki retired or Saki. So I may not agree with them.
So the courts need an acceptable definition of national insecurity.
No. You see, the evidence, you must produce. You cannot tell the court because of national security. As I told you, national security is a nebulous, amphibious thing that is neither here nor there. It all depends on what the government is saying it is, but subject to the interpretation of the court. The court will have to tell you, look, from the evidence before us, there's not enough evidence to keep this man with you forever.
So government has not
yes. You remember that
evidence to the satisfactory level of the court.
There are cases where the government went to court and some people are asked to be kept in custody. Cases of terrorism and what have you. For example, now, if somebody, like a commander of Boko Haram is caught, arrested, taken to court, the court will not be willing to grant that person bail. And even the lawyer himself will just try. But
I was going to say that lawyers are still going to come out.
But he knows that he has a weak case. Because even public opinion will change the tide. So we have to, as I said, it all depends on the circumstance. It's not absolute. And I think what the president should have done would have been to at least to further expand, expatiate, or tell us what is its own concept of national security and the liberty of the people or rule of law. Because rule of law is doing things as established by the principles, the norms, the nuances of the society.
Indeed, that is what it is. But now and again, once in a long while, the law actually stands as an impediment to the desired objective.
Of who?
Sometimes,
Of who?
I think of society. Sometimes when you want, when a person, and this is spurious off the top of my head, when a person is known to could not possibly have honestly accumulated a certain level of wealth in the absence of obvious explanations, the law could cover such a person.
No, you see, the EFCC Act says if you are suspected of having amassed certain wealth beyond your legitimate income, you should come to court to explain.
But Adide has explained that the implementation, the problem was...
Excuse me, the greatest problem we have in this country is the 1999 Constitution. The 1999 Constitution, like I said somewhere yesterday, is a fraud.
Okay.
And until that Constitution is jettisoned, and we have a constitution of the people, for the people, by the people, then we'll continue to have this problem. Because nobody saw, even Obasanjo himself did not see the 1999 Constitution before he was sworn in as president.
Yeah, because they gathered 25 men to run.
It was after he was sworn in that the copy was handed over to him.
Oh dear.
So can we call that the constitution of the people? And whereas the preamble to the constitution says, we the people of Nigeria.
You see?
We, who are those we?
Okay.
So 20 people, 5 people,
now,
we never knew.
And everything meanwhile is based on this constitution.
To the extent that even yesterday I was at a forum where the likes of just of the Supreme Court, Wolara Nukweku was, son former president of NBA was there, and we were talking about this same matter. And we said, look, why should we import the National Youth Service Corps Act? Why should we import the Land Use Act into the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Where is it done?
Okay. Otumba Remi in Oshogbo, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in.
You see, with due respect to Dr. Yusuf, I think lawyers are one of the most people who are causing problems in this country. Because national security is very, very important. We make the law, And when people circumvent these laws, definitely they have to be punished. You can imagine the situation of the National Security Advisor using the money that is meant to take care of the people of this country and distributing it to people, distributing the money to other people. And these people too, they took this money without working for this country. We know that this situation can cause it's causing a lot of problems for the military, for the security of this. These things are very glaring. And when situations like that come, because the lawyers, they have the opportunity of working for these people and getting their own money. That is why they talk about the rule of law every time. Imagine Evans.
All right, Otumba.
Evans that has killed so many people in this country and is in jail. You will still be talking that they are blocking his human rights in jail. When somebody who has killed people, the law is protecting somebody who kills. What about those people they have killed?
Okay, Otumba, thank you very much. Appreciate your call. We wanted to thank you very much for that call, but we wanted to leave as much room as possible.
I guess you wanted to address Dr. Jide, not me. Because the position I took is different from what he's saying. He should be addressing Jide in respect to that.
Uncle Yori, Mustafa was held in captivity for many years and released after, with no case established by the state against him. He was held. I'm coming.
You're talking about the rule of law generally.
He was convicted by that court.
You're talking about the rule of law generally now.
Please don't make the mistake. He was convicted. It was only the appellate court that freed him.
Exactly.
Even beyond that point, we're talking about the rule of law in the context of the fight against corruption.
You know, I've explained that. Like, I was the one that gave the illustration of China. For example, that I was the one that even stated that corruption is a threat to national...
People speak stealing Nigeria's commonwealth.
But the bottom line is, you approach the court, you take the person...
definitions.
Exactly. You take the matters to the court. Let the court decide. I am against anyone stealing the commonwealth. Anyone that steals what belongs to us is... what doesn't work?
It doesn't work. That's why the military... That's why the military have their own courts.
What has military done for... what has military done for Nigeria? Nigeria. Where we have found ourselves today, well, as a result of military intervention in our politics.
I hear you. I don't want to get into that conversation.
Even at that, you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because all the developmental projects you have in this country were brought about by the military.
When you look at it. When you look at it for a moment.
Look at that moment, and
I want to keep this within the context of the fight against corruption.
Not only corruption, terrorism too.
Uncle Yori, security. This is what you are doing framing. What you are doing is to help the president frame what this is how the president
are you not getting to that?
No.
Are you taking that?
The president doesn't need my help.
This is what
he has all sorts of
exactly. Cool down. This is the way the statement should have been framed.
Okay.
Are you getting my point? No, it was this program that we framed it to. Dr. Fassi brought in terrorism and corruption. We framed it to corruption. That on the issue of corruption and terrorism, that's a threat to national security. And it is established. Nobody can controvert that. Even public opinion will be in support of government arresting someone, detaining that person for a particular...
Regrettably, it reverses the case. Some people are saying that if corruption will help us, make us feel better, eat better,
because we are not enforcing our law, because we have a double-sided... because we are not enforcing our law, because we have a double-sided approach, and government is not thorough in the dispensation of justice when it comes to corruption.
Samson in Ireland. Hello, Samson.
Good day, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Please go ahead and don't stop.
Yes. We are talking about rule of law. Is there any rule of law in Nigeria? Because if we have to look at it very well, there is only law for the less privileged in Nigeria. Every other one, for example, what is happening in Nigeria is quite unbelievable. I was thinking about it. It's like the other day I was looking at Bruce saying I've called Canada, I've called America, I've called this, I've called that, because of what is happening in Nigeria. At times I'm ashamed as a Nigerian to see the way our people is portraying themselves to international community. For example, I don't want to mention any name. One prominent person in Nigeria was involved, or let me not involved, I'm sorry for that language, was indicted for robbery. In a civilized society, that person must step down if we are talking about rule of law. Because if a criminal by the roadside is being caught, and after when the police are making investigation, they said, oh, with that mechanic, I used to keep my gun and my ammunition. That police officer, that's the mechanic and every other person, even those people that come to come and do their service their car, all of them will be packed. But when it comes to who is who in Nigeria, that is when the lawyers will be saying, no, it's not done in America, it's not done. I've been living in Europe for over 20-something years.
Okay.
I brought Ghana police. When I was, we had the issue, I sued them. More than 3 times, they were returning and writing to me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
What we can do outside here, try it in Nigeria.
All right, then. Thank you very much for calling in, Samson. You know, I don't think anybody would have a problem with what was said if the parameters, the definitions were in place. Jide has accused me of actually trying to frame the president's statement.
Exactly, because you are trying to put it in context.
I was trying to make sense of it. And it can't be with a negative purpose. That statement could not have been in a negative purpose. You could say to me, provide the proof for what I just said.
As media practitioner, we owe the society a responsibility to put things in proper context. We are here to put things in proper context.
So when the president, when he stated that rule of law will be subject to state security,
national
interest,
national interest and security.
And then he clarifies that the issue of corruption, the issue of terrorism, or you know, every one of us, we will be debating this issue. In actual sense, everybody we applaud the president that, Mr. President, we are right on you on this matter, because the truth of the matter must be told. Corruption is a major problem of our society. People, look, I've said it, we are not fighting corruption anywhere in Nigeria.
Because it has grown into the fabric of our society.
If the NSA under Jonathan could distribute public funds, I'm asking you, what mechanism have we put in place? Because it was only Dasuki. Dasuki alone couldn't have withdraw all the money. Are you with me? And then distribute all the money. Who are his accomplices? And what mechanism have we put in place to plug that hole? To plug that hole now?
Well, I would like to believe that this is another effort towards plugging that hole.
Not even that. Government is all run in the public domain. There have been
public sentiment.
Yes, and there are many of his accomplices who are facing trial. Many people collected money from him. The Kwesi, Mechu, the Air Vice Marshal.
Even I'm not talking about beneficiaries alone. I'm not talking about beneficiaries. Yeah. Are you getting me? There are people in the offices he was working in. There are others that are involved. Because in public service.
Don't forget the national security. You see, when you are prosecuting a case, you may even decide to use an accomplice.
As a witness.
As a witness, yeah. So that you can get
the facts of the matter. I agree with you.
It's not for us to try to see.
I agree with
you. The point to be made is this: terrorism, corruption, these twin issues would never make us to get to anywhere if we treat it with kid gloves.
I agree with you.
Drastic ailment requires drastic cure. Mazi Okoroafo in Arochukwu, good morning.
Good morning, Sir Yuri. Good morning.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Honestly speaking, you see, the judiciary and security, all these two things are very, very important. But you ask yourself, which one do we step first? As a Nigerian, everybody should be more conscious of it. Because what we should know now is that everybody going to court now, you have to examine yourself and submit the case, and make sure what you are going there is fact. We have facts and figures so that you will not run down the judicial system. But the question is that security is very, very paramount important. In as much as we are working for the security of this country, everybody should be on the stool. Because whether the statement is true or not is true, but the question is that we have to be very careful that we are now made for our lawyers to sit up so that anytime they do anything, they know that the side effects will be more than the benefits of what they are getting put inside their pocket, because it is no longer money. It is what people said, the Nigerians are the best before any other thing. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Indeed, thank you very much. Corruption, as Fassi illustrated before we took that call, it's become a big problem. It's become all-pervading. In fact, so much so that there are those who think that if you were to pull out a loose end of the corruption fabric, actually, there's the danger that the entire society might come loose.
You know how China dealt with corruption?
The entire society might come loose if you were to single-mindedly, bloody-mindedly pull at that single thread, the whole society, and then that begins to go to beneficiaries that you said you were not talking about the last time.
You know, the bloody-mindedness that China adopted.
And
it started from the Central Working Committee. The highest.
But you say it's not only China.
It's not only China.
I'm just giving China
other countries.
And you know what? How China has moved people out of poverty.
But those countries have been doing it. We in Nigeria have not seen fit to do it.
Where leaders committed suicide because they were accused of corruption. They've not been taken to court. They've not been proved that they committed the crime. Just mere allegation, and they committed suicide. But in this country, we glorify them. We glorify them, and we think, yes, it is their time to steal. My time will come. And if we continue with the mindset,
there's a conspiracy of silence.
Yeah, if we continue with that mindset,
society look away
this
from
country will never make
the
progress.
probable, if not the obvious
It's
source.
not the conspiracy of silence, Uncle Yori. It is the conspiracy of the political class. Conspiracy of
the generality of the people.
I think
the generality of the people.
No.
It's the generality of the people. Because the generality of the people.
I'll allow you to make your point.
They encourage politicians to be corrupt.
Okay.
They don't even ask them questions. They take from them, and they want to take more and more from them.
And they don't necessarily care about the source of that which they are taking.
My position is this: when you impoverish the generality of the people, when you don't run developmental policies that will bring about change in the welfare of the people, and you come at the end of every electoral cycle to share what is called dividends. In actual sense, I hate using the word dividends because it's an economic term that had no basis, because you only get dividends when you make investment. It's an economic term, not a political. You deliver when it comes to politics, it's deliverables. When there are no deliverables, they come with dividends and they say they do empowerment. Empowerment, you give car, you give
car is even better.
gardening machine, motorcycle, or whatever. And you are blaming the people. Look, I have asked this question. If we want to deal with the issue of corruption, you know what we did? From this present Fourth Republic, 1990, we go back to the form that everybody submitted to Code of Conduct Bureau in 1999. Every political class of that day. What was the thing that you owned before 1999? If you value our political class, their worth, those that have held public offices in 1999 today, if you value their lifestyle prior to 1999 to post-1999, you will be shocked.
But you see, as we're we're winding down, I was going to suggest for your consideration. I wanted to suggest for your consideration that this whole scenario, just like the Executive Order 6, this new statement from the president, the guilty don't have. If you are guiltless, if you are blameless, you don't have anything to fear. It doesn't even concern you. It's only when you are in a delicate place, requiring supreme legal wizardry, that it might make a big difference, this whole concept.
When it's not defined, you'll be afraid.
Excuse me. Even at that, to me, we are just making a mountain out of a molehill. What the president has said is a mere statement. It has no rule of, no force of law. It cannot be quoted anywhere. It cannot be quoted anywhere. So we are just ventilating our views.
But when the president said what he said, he was sort of given direction that this is,
It's a
I don't want you to be
proclamation.
surprised. It didn't go as far as being a proclamation.
It's not a proclamation.
Since that one has its own legal definitions.
Yes.
But let me bring in Additional in a jaw. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Good morning to the guests in the studio.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, you see, the number one problem, number two problem, number three problem of Nigeria is corruption. And I must tell you that the issue of corruption, if it is tackled, every other problem in Nigeria will be solved. And Uncle Yori, I want you to know that evil thrive in a society where good men look away. If you break the base of law in this country and men, the judges become indifferent, insensitive to issues that need to be handled critically, they will make mess of the law. And so it is not about if you have enough laws in our land that can trash all corrupt cases, that can deal with cases that need not to be prolonged to problem for us. They bring all kinds of technicalities when they are talking about issues in the court. You see, just like your guest in the studio, in China, if you corrupt some amount of money, you will be killed. And there was a case in Nigeria. A Nigerian was caught with hard drugs in another land, in Pakistan. And he was to be executed. Do you know the country make a plea that he should be freed? The government replied and gives that he has if you commit this offense against our own land, this is the punishment. So there's no remedy about that. If we can follow this law peruse and follow it to the letter, this country will make a way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Additional. Appreciate your call. Really appreciate your call. It's going back to Dr. Johnson's position of implementation. We are hardly implementing these things because I saw Dr. Johnson and perhaps Dr. Fasi Yusuf also nod when you said that we have adequate laws, adequate statutes on our books to sort our problems
But to
out.
me, there's one that is still missing.
Which one?
Corruption should be made a capital offense. A capital offense.
Okay.
That's the bloodied approach.
We've not gone that far.
Yes.
That's the bloodied approach.
By the time you execute 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, Nigerians will fall in place.
I agree with him.
Because if you do that, then...
That's the bloodied approach that China adopted.
I don't know. I don't know.
Honestly.
I hear what you're saying intellectually.
Because
I hear what you're saying intellectually.
Because it's a threat to national
security. If you do that,
it's a threat to national
you've got to
security.
leave the rule of law alone.
No, that's not rule of law.
No, because the law has established that it's in the law.
It should still
That
be part
if
of the
you
rule of
steal,
law.
you will be killed.
Just like the example Additional cited.
Exactly. If you steal, you will be killed. Stated.
This against our land.
State, you
you
will
are
be
to
killed.
be-
Exactly.
You remember that guy, Donny Buhari, his first coming? That was it Bartholomew or whatever that was executed for drugs?
Yeah.
That was a sharp drop
In
drug
trafficking.
drug peddling.
But people know that here, don't worry. If
Don't
you have
worry,
enough
yeah.
money,
Yeah.
a lawyer will prove the
We'll be
rule
there-
of
we'll
law.
be there to-
Those are the technicalities Additional was talking about.
We'll be there to defend you.
He will be there.
We lawyers will be there to defend you.
Yes.
You can even
And introduce
get
all sorts of
You can
technicalities.
even get a perpetual and permanent injunction.
There
that
you
should
go.
bring you
And
to-
that would be sanctioned by rule of law.
You remember,
Exactly.
it's in this country that a governor got an order.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
A perpetual order.
That
He should not be interrogated.
He should not be
He should not be tried. He should not be
invited.
prosecuted.
Oh dear. Well, Dr. Fasi Yusuf, thank you very, very much for coming on.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jide Johnson, thank you very much
a
for
pleasure
coming
to
as
be
well.
with you.
You know, it really was. So that's our program today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Volari. I wonder what you think about the topic. See you tomorrow, God willing.
Thank you.